How much did you raise in the seed?
5. So it was less about the fundraise at the time. Like I was not thinking about it as like, oh, we got a fundraise and then we can do this and we can do that. I think it was more of a question of, I've learned by then, you can't necessarily decide on the outcome, but there's one thing you can absolutely control, and that's the people that you work with and the people you bring together. And in every version of our one-liner, we talk about a network, a community of builders, right? And that starts with the people you bring around the table. And every person, particularly at the beginning, matters so much. So for us, there was like one area where the experts in teams work and how to organize work. So that was like bringing people like Dan Ariely, like Adam Grant, like people like that you can't, they're so invaluable that in terms of their knowledge and their expertise and be thinking about some of these problems for way longer than I have.
I think one of the things that a lot of founders would struggle with at this point, which it seems you almost had this just instant answer, is who are those people that best fit, you know, whatever expertise you need that you want in your investor set. And then maybe even trickier, how the hell do you get to them? You know, saying, oh yeah, well, we got Dan Ariely. How do you go and do that, right? How do you go and figure out who it is and then find your way to that person in a way that is compelling to say, oh, by the way, we're raising money for our startup. Can we have some of yours, please? Because you don't need specifically his capital. Capital is capital.
Right.
You wanted his expertise that came along with the capital. How do you do that?
One of my biggest journeys, like the challenge in that kid doing startup years, which I'm very much still in, is asking for help. It's always hard to ask for help. And I always had a hard time with that. Maybe it's about it's uncomfortable to show weakness, or maybe you just feel like you don't want to bother people. And I had to learn that basically it is actually valuing someone that to ask for their help. And that unlocked kind of that learning that you can get to anyone. They may not be interested, but you can definitely get to them. If you come in with a genuine kind of admiration for their work and for who they are and what they can do, and you come in, you know, kind of, hey, I'm doing this. I think you'd be interested. Here's why. More times that I would expect, it actually just works. I mean, I've brought in incredible people that I got to by a LinkedIn cold message. Like literally, can you please give feedback on this thing that I'm building? Because that's why I thought you would bring a vantage point that we simply are not privy to. Right. And that works sometimes. Probably maybe most of the time it doesn't work, but sometimes it does work. And for the times that it works, it's worth everything.
You know, I love, this is something that I've thought a lot about over time. Maybe because, you know, I've gotten a fair number of emails from people with no clear ask, or the only ask is 15 minutes of your time, or will you invest or something like that, which happened a lot, you know, while working at YC. And the thing I always want from someone is give me something concrete to bite on. Ask me a specific question about something I genuinely understand that shows two things. That shows, one, that you've thought about why you're emailing or why you're reaching out. And two, honestly, I want to feel useful, right? And I think everyone out there wants to feel useful at the end of the day. So
very much so.
Let's take that and roll that forward a little bit to thinking about how your A comes together, how you transition from the point of seed into A. So seed, $5 million, a lot of great people. It's a lot of money. And one of the things that I remember finding fascinating about how you were building is at that point, your entire focus, at least from my perspective, is we're just going to build the business for as long as we absolutely need to, and capital will come later. But what was changing inside the business between the seed and the A in terms of the story you were telling to people outside the company? Were things evolving?
Okay, so what's really clicked with A.Team between the seed and the A was that, you know, we started with a marketplace offering, creating cloud-based teams, but then we realized it's not a marketplace. It's a network. Because it's not supply and demand. We care about builders, whether they're independent, outside of, you know, like doing their thing, wanting autonomy. But we also care very much about builders that are working at companies and are forming A-teams around them.
While you were exploring that transition, and it makes a ton of sense to me, like a lot of people think they're marketplaces when they're not, simply because people are buying things, right? And there's a fundamentally different mode in which you can operate. When you applied that out to, again, this network of investors, were you regularly meeting with sets of investors and filtering down to the ones that you wanted? How many investors did you then go out and actually pitch?
We have to look back at this. I think it was under 10 people, I believe.
Of those, call it 10 investors that you pitched, were those one-on-one pitches, or were those going to the full partnership and pitching? Do you recall what the funnel looked like?
I didn't think of it as a funnel, honestly, because maybe the funnel was so long.
Right,
like it
because
was
your funnel
either
started
never
all the way
funnel.
back at the seed. And
Yeah, I think the learning that many people go through, it's not as much about the fund. It's really about the partner, like the actual person. It's team building 101, right? It's not about the brand and what company come from and all of that. It's really about that person. Like you want that person on your team. So whether we're speaking with a partnership or not, like ultimately it's that partner. Then there's certain dynamics about the partner with their fund, which are important to keep in mind.
What do you mean by the dynamic between the partner and the fund? What's the difference between a partner and the partnership?
It depends. It's like when you join a company, it's really important to understand how governance works at that company. Funds are just the same. So then the question is who the partner you work with, like how decisions made. What's going to happen if there's a disagreement at the partnership level? Because you could be in a scenario that is definitely not ideal, where the partner is really all in, but it's not enough.
Yeah, I've seen this in go right and wrong in a couple different ways. I'll talk to a founder and they'll say, hey, we have this partner. The partner is really, really excited. We're raising this, massive round. And they say they can get it through the partnership, that it's done. And I say, well, but that person's fairly new to the fund. They haven't made a lot of investments yet. This is outside of the normal, bounds of their investment. Are you sure about this? Right? They're going to have to convince everyone versus if you get the founder of a fund or something like that, or someone with an unbelievable track record, well recognized within the fund, they have more latitude to do things, to sort of take a swing, even if they don't get full buy-in. And understanding that, sometimes it's political weight, sometimes it's actually governance style weight. Who can do what? It's written into the code of the decision-making process. You got to understand that.
And I find that aligning its incentives there is also really meaningful. I mean, that's the one-on-one of building networks, right? It's aligning incentives. It could be that a more junior partner, for example, actually you want to be his first big ticket. And it's like, it's going to be very clear that this company, like the hope is that this company is going to do extremely well. He's going to go to bat for you because like that's going to be what he'll be known for and what she'll be known for. And that's how she's going to make the ticket to really winning in that new position. Could be that. And whether it's a senior partner or junior partner alike, there's also the kind of the bigger incentive of why does it matter to them? Like if it's a fairly established fund and it's a really big fund, you're going to be a small check. Okay, how does it move the needle for them truly?
Yeah, and sometimes I think one of the tricky things here, or another tricky thing, is that sometimes you can ask the person you're talking to, you can ask the partner point blank, how does this work? Can you write this check? And a lot of investors will be completely honest about how this works and who they need, what the checks are. Those are the best. Those are just the best investors. And some of them will say, oh no, don't worry, I can do this. There's no problem at all. And that's always a little bit shady, but it's also a piece of information for you. And I think that founders are typically afraid to ask these questions about internal process, about who else needs to agree what the process is, but you got to do it because it gives you so much information back and it avoids wasting time, honestly, on someone who maybe can't do the deal that they say that they want to do, or there's always another
I think
step.
what helps potentially with something like this is to be very, very clear about your approach and strategy. And be very thoughtful about it. Obviously, going into a fundraise to raise money is not great. To build, the right network of networks, essentially, and the structure of it is that's really powerful. And I think presenting that is interesting because you're gonna have some people that are gonna be like, "Get out of here! Like we don't want, we don't want any of this like crazy stuff." And other people are like, "This is exactly what I want." In a way, it's very similar to hiring. People sometimes come into interviews and they're like, I got to sell my company as much as I can. I actually find it more valuable to say the things that are the most controversial about your company. because then you're going to get the people that really, really love it, and there's literally no other company for them, or the people that really hate it. And it's so much better to know this as early as possible. I think the same thing happens with investors. Like, bring the things you're not sure about. Bring the things that makes it atypical. Bring the thing that may be controversial, and then you're gonna have the people who will be like, "This is my jam. Like, this is exactly what I want to be doing."
I always love the idea of taking like the worst thing about your company or the most controversial thing about your company and using that as a filter. And in a fundraise, people will often shy away from the weaknesses of their business and their pitch or their deck. But the better move is to be incredibly upfront. Here's the big risk. Here's how we're mitigating it. Will it work? But we've got a good plan. And look how good we are at all these other things. So, you got to trust us. And that like takes away this gotcha moment that I think a lot of people will look for in disqualifying an investment. So it's great to do it in all the different places.
Something I learned and didn't realize, the diligence phase and the closing phase, how meaningful they are. For the investor to actually get to know your company fully and deeply, maybe even more than you did before that diligence, is actually really important, because how can they help if they don't actually know the company intimately? I did not necessarily have that perspective, but now I do, and it's meaningful.